Okay, hello everybody. We're trying this again, hopefully this time with the correct title of Silverline 101 with Barb Kaalberg, who has been incredibly patient through all of my goofs and mistakes here. But I think we are all good to go now. At least I hope we're all good to go and all the titles should be correct. I'm going to look really quick and see if they are indeed correct. Because my old friend Chris Knight came here thinking he was going to listen to us talk about music, which we, of course, were not doing. And good, it is correct because I see that Becca has just shared it. Thank you very much, Becca, with the correct title there. So, Barb, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Good. So I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions tonight. Hopefully we get some questions from the folks who are watching as well. But I'm going to ask you all kinds of questions about you, about comics, about how you got from Baby Barb to right here today. And so first thing I'm going to ask you is, what are your earliest memories of comic books? Now, I don't mean you working in them, but I mean earliest memories of you holding comic books. What are those earliest memories you have?
Well, actually, it wasn't comic books, but comic strips. I was a huge fan of the Sunday comics. I followed Steve Canyon because I thought he was cute. I read Little Abner because, believe it or not, my father was a dead ringer for Little Abner.
Really?
Oh, yeah, yeah. You know, the really broad shoulders, slim hips, really tall, black hair, really tall.
Did he have the grain stalk in his
Sometimes. He was a farmer. Yeah,
yep.
He was raised on a farm. So, and you know, all little girls are slightly in love with their daddies.
Yep.
When they're real little, and I was like, oh, daddy's in the comics. So that was, I like that one. And later on, I was a big fan of Garfield, and I still follow Luann online.
Really?
Oh,
so yeah. I was going to ask you. You know, we don't see a whole lot of comic strips anymore, and in fact, even in my class, you know, I mention them so that students will know the difference between strips and comics. But you know, the newspapers have kind of gone away, and so where do you read your comic strips now?
There's an online site for comic strips. I can't remember the name of it, but you can just Google comic strips online. My cousin Terry Beatty does Rex Morgan.
Wait, Terry Beatty is your cousin?
Yes, he is.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow, I did not know that.
Small world, I know.
Wow, that's very cool. So, your dad now did your mom and your siblings, because you have a brother and a sister, did they also read comics?
Oh yeah, we had to share the paper around. You know, my father got it first, and
of course.
Then the kids got them after that. And you know, there's always a few Donald Duck comics floating around for whatever reason. I don't even remember where we got them. Probably, you know, cousins or something like that.
Yeah.
But those floated around. And it wasn't until I started working at the Rexall drugstore when I was 15 years old. And really? I started at 90 cents an hour. This was back in the early 70s, so or mid 70s. And I started at the age of 15 working as a clerk. And one of my jobs was to go to the spinner rack and take off all the old comics that hadn't sold.
Yeah. Tear
the cover off so that the owner could send them back to the distributor, because he got so many cents on the dollar back for the books that he didn't sell. And I was supposed to throw out the rest into the dumpster in the back. Well, the dumpster in the back happened to be my car trunk. So
yeah.
So and, I had a lot of comics without covers.
And of course, it was illegal for people to sell those with the covers ripped off of them. But I can remember as a kid buying dozens of those from the used bookstores. Hey, Oven says hello, Roland and Barbara. Hey, Oven. Hey,
Oven.
Make sure you come up with some hard questions for Barb now. We need questions for her. So that's pretty cool. A drugstore with a spinner rack. So now you're a farm gal.
Yep.
You grew up on now. I'm gonna ask you to forgive me here. You grew up on a farm in Iowa, or
It was in Iowa. It was a very small
yeah.
town. 3 miles out of town. The town was 2,500 people. My graduating class had 80 people in it.
Wow, mine too.
So it was a small community.
So now, what kind of responsibilities did you have? Because everyone on a farm works. Everyone in a farm family works.
Oh yeah.
What were some of your responsibilities as a farm girl?
I did a lot of mowing when I was younger. I mean, I'm talking like 12.
Yeah.
Because we had like 2 or 3 acres to mow. I drove our International Harvester pickup for the first time when I was 12.
Cool.
By the time I was 16, I was hiring out as farm help to rake and bale hay.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and I learned how to plow and disc. So yeah, by the time I was like 17, 18 years old. Well, I loved being a farm hand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, most of the times I talk to anybody, I'm from a farm family as well. I didn't really do any farming, but I'm from a farm family. So, anytime I talk to people though, they're from a farm, they're like, yeah, I enjoyed the farm. It was hard, but I enjoyed the farm work. Now, I know that you have recently retired. Are there any plans of yours to return to any kind of farming life at all, or?
No, I'm a suburban housewife now. I've got a garden in the back, but it's basically a salsa garden.
Lots of tomatoes, I hope.
Yeah, I do can. So there's a throwback. I mean, up until the mid 70s, we were pretty self-sufficient. We had an acre or more vegetable garden. We had an acre in sweet corn.
That's a big garden.
It is. We had orchard, grapes, strawberries. We had cattle and hogs, so we butchered every fall and put up a year's worth of meat, a year's worth of vegetables, fruit.
Wow.
We were pretty self-sufficient. And then I always like to tease. This isn't exactly true, but I always like to tease that in the late 70s, my father discovered frozen pizza, and then it was all over. But in truth, my mom went to work, and that kind of went by the wayside. We started, buying our groceries in.
Yeah, yeah, it makes it difficult when there's no one being full time there at the home to do all that. So how did you move from comic strips to comic books then?
Well, like I said, when I was working at the Rexall, I started taking the comics home and reading most of them. And and this is where the part that we talked about last night. Teenage girls are just every bit as bad as teenage boys when it comes to
raging hormones.
Yes, hyper muscled or anatomy type of male or female. And I fell in love with Mike Grell's Warlord, Travis Morgan. Here's a good-looking guy with a little goatee and the white hair, and he's running around in a skull cod piece. I mean, come on! I was 14. This is great stuff.
Well, I find it funny that it's Warlord, because he's Warlord wasn't a real. I don't know where it would fall in the selling list, but it certainly wasn't at the top of DC's popular characters. So I found it interesting that it's Warlord and not someone like, say, Batman or Aquaman or Superman.
Robin was a close second. Not the junior Robin with the little tights and the little booties that had the little wing on the back. I like the older Robin, the teenage Robin.
Gotcha.
And then he became Nightwing, so I kind of liked that as well. So yeah, there's all kinds of characters that were appealing. Later on, I became a huge Avengers fan, and I was a Tony Stark fan then.
Okay.
Again, I think he had a beard too, isn't it?
Yeah. Well,
He's got that beard thing fetish going on, don't I?
Yeah. Yeah. So for those of you who are watching, we've been joined by Thomas Flormonti. Actually, we've been joined by Thomas Flormonti's iPad, and Tommy has agreed to do some inking for your visual entertainment while we quiz Barb on her life and her comic background. So you had a crush on Tony Stark and on Warlord.
Yeah, Travis Morgan.
Yeah, Travis Morgan. You know what? I don't know what it is. I know who Warlord is, and I have a chunk of Warlords. I just probably only read them once when I bought them, and then just never. It wasn't one of like the Avengers. I went back to time and time again. Mm-hmm. Warlord, I didn't do that.
And I know it's like anathema, but Captain America never did anything for me. I thought he was a stick in the mud. He's self-righteous. I didn't like him. I like the rebel Tony Stark. It's something about the bad boys, I guess.
So did you kind of think the same thing about Superman then?
Yeah, he was kind of boring.
Yeah. I think that's a common
goody two shoes.
Yeah, I think that's kind of a common theme. So at what point in time then did what are some of the first before we get there? What are some of the first creator names that you can remember recognizing that there's somebody behind? I've already forgotten his name. Travis Morgan. There's someone behind Tony Stark creating them. What names do you first recall? Can you remember any of those?
Not when I was a teenager. It wasn't actually when I became interested in becoming a professional in the industry that I started picking up on these names. And actually, I came in very backwards. So when I got into the industry, I didn't know half of the names of the creators, and I didn't know when I was at a convention whether I was talking to a creator, a fan, or the janitor.
Really?
So I just talked to everybody the same, and remarkably, that worked very, very well in making friends in the creators with the creators, because they were so relieved and refreshed to have somebody who wasn't so awestruck with what they did, because I didn't know what they did.
Yeah. You didn't. So, you didn't fan Gaga over them.
No, I have a famous Bernie Wrightson story that I'll tell later that highlights that.
Yeah. So at what point in time then did you? So you say you backed into it. So what did you first start off doing?
Well, I lost interest in comics after I got out of high school and left that job, and then I went to college, and I spent most of my time reading high fantasy.
Okay. What did you study in college?
Advertising design.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And I got married and I started a family, and had little kids around the house, and I'm like, I am so bored. I gotta do something. And I was hanging out in Walden Books one day, and I ran across an ElfQuest graphic novel, Sorrow's End. And I bought that, and I was immediately just sucked in, hook, line, and sinker. I was in love with the graphic novels. Became a huge ElfQuest fan. Started, and I'd always painted, done acrylic paintings through most of my life, and in high school and college, and I did it for fun at home. So I started painting the ElfQuest characters, and because they're copywritten, I never sold them. I never made a dime on it. I did it for my pure enjoyment. But I would give some of the paintings to some of my friends, and I made friends through the fandom, the fandom pages in the back of the books.
Yeah.
ElfQuest fan clubs and stuff like that. I made friends, and I would give some of these paintings to some of my ElfQuest friends. And one of them invited me to a science fiction convention in Chicago, WindyCon.
WindyCon was the name of it?
WindyCon in Chicago. It was a science fiction convention. It was the first convention I had ever attended. So I went there, and I took some of my paintings, and Richard Pini was actually a guest there that year, and somebody gave him one of my paintings, and he sought me out and said, "I'd like to hire you."
Really?
Yep. Yep. He says, "I want a painting, a 3-by-3-foot acrylic painting as a backdrop for our convention booth. Would you be interested in doing it?" And this was my first actual contact with anybody in the comics industry. So during the course of painting this, I was studying Wendy's work and her black and white work, and I'm using a brush to do all this colored painting, and I'm going, why don't I take this brush and ink comic books? And that gave me the germ of the idea, and it stuck, and it just like wildfire.
Yeah.
All of a sudden I was just impassioned that I was going to do this. I was going to become an inker. So after I finished the project, I decided I was going to go out to, and I picked, of course, I picked the largest convention you could possibly go to. I picked San Diego Comic-Con, and I packed up everything, including the kitchen sink, which is exactly the wrong thing that you're not supposed to do. I put in there everything I'd done in high school, all my paintings, characters, anatomy studies, everything in this humongous portfolio, and I drug it all out to San Diego and took it around, and of course I got crucified.
Yeah. I can imagine. Do you remember any of the people that you saw, any of the editors that you showed your portfolio to then?
You're talking something like 30 some years ago.
Yeah, I do realize. And of course, this is not to say anything bad about any of them, but sometimes you're like, oh, I remember I showed my work to Mark Gruenwald or to Steve Gerber or something like that, and you don't remember any of them?
Not really. I think there was probably David Kempetti from Innovation. I'm sure there was somebody from Malibu. And
so you weren't just hitting Marvel and DC. You were hitting
everybody.
Everybody. Okay.
Yeah. My best experience at that convention, apart from getting completely crucified, like I said before, the critiques were harsh, and they were. Yeah. But I listened to them. I didn't take them personally. I listened to the critiques, and that was really important. They told me what I was doing wrong and what I needed to do right.
Yeah.
They told me how to put together a portfolio. They told me what to do. And then I went and sat in seminars, how-to seminars.
Yeah.
And
which San Diego used to have a lot of.
Yeah.
At the time.
And I sat in on a 2-hour seminar with Dick Giordano, and it was the best seminar I had ever. He went from A to Z on exactly what you needed, the materials, the brushes. He did samples. It was awesome, and I took notes like my life depended on it.
Wow. Yeah, and that's cool.
Yeah, and then I came home and I just did nothing for a solid year but practice my inking. I just filled pages after page after page with solid lines, circles, squiggly lines, just trying to learn control. Then I got some samples. I got samples from Barry Blair.
Barry Blair, yeah.
Barry Blair, I got a bunch of samples from him, and of course back then you could actually send a little self-addressed stamped envelope to companies,
and
they would send you photocopies back to practice on, which I did that too.
Yeah.
And I just practiced every single day for a year until I had such good control that I could make perfectly ruled lines with a brush.
Nice.
And then I went out to San Diego the following year and landed my first job.
Wow. So hang on, we're going to come back to your first job there. Cassisi says hello. Hey, Cassisi. Good to see you again this evening. Royal Airships has a question for us. He says, how did you find your own style, and can you switch between styles?
I have gotten fairly diverse. If an editor says, can you give me more of a Jim Lee look, I can do that. I have my own style. It's very fluid. very brush-like, but I can switch. I can imitate. One of the reasons I got my painting job for Warp Graphics is because I'm a fantastic forger. I could forge Wendy's style in painting.
Meaning Wendy Penny from ElfQuest, yeah.
Yeah. So
I don't know that I've ever heard anyone say I'm a fantastic forger.
I never did it for money.
No.
But yeah, I did a lot of different paintings. I forged them.
But I would make the argument, maybe you can agree or disagree with me here, but I would make the argument that in copying someone else's style like that, you actually learn the things that they do, and then you're able to take sometimes take the good, sometimes the bad, but you're able to take that and apply it to your own work.
Yes. I mean, I used to study Mark Farmer's stuff.
Oh, good inker,
yeah, I loved his stuff.
Yeah.
And one time I was working on She-Hulk, and the editor said, please give her Byrne hair after John Byrne.
Right.
And I copied that sucker just perfect.
So who was the penciler? Do you remember?
Yeah, John Stadema.
Oh, John Stadema. Okay, yeah. He's not a John Byrne lookalike at all, though, is he?
No. So I had to compensate.
Yeah. Cassisi says it's mastery. Royal Airship says a femme fatale forger art thief. There's a storyline in there somewhere. Yeah.
Could be.
So okay, let's circle back to your first work.
Okay.
You landed it in San Diego as a result of going to San Diego.
I landed it with Chris Ulm.
Chris Ulm, and what did Chris Ulm give you? And for those of you who don't know, Chris Ulm was the editor-in-chief of Malibu Comics and my boss for several years. At
the time, he was doing Eternity Comics, and he hired me actually to do gray washes.
Okay.
And not inks. He wanted
gray wash only.
Gray wash only, and he wanted me to do that on Tiger X.
Okay, been done.
Yes.
Yeah. So was the book already inked, and you just added gray wash? Okay, cool.
Yeah. And he says, "Well, can you do gray washes?" And I'm saying, "Oh, absolutely, yeah, piece of cake." I didn't have the first clue what the hell gray washes were, but I lied through my teeth because I'm a quick learner. So I got off the plane, and the first stop I made was the library, and I checked out every book I could on watercolor. Now I'm an acrylic painter. I'm not a watercolorist, so I taught myself watercoloring. By the time the pages arrived, I knew what I was doing.
That's funny.
So I did I did 2 issues of Tiger X, and then he says, "Well, how about 3 issues of Jack the Ripper? You can do the inks and the gray washes." And that's probably the most horrid piece of work I've ever done. I can't even look at them.
I think I own those.
Oh, they're bad.
I'm pretty sure I have.
So
do you know, was Tiger X collected into a bound volume?
Yeah, I think so.
I've got that then.
Yeah.
I've got to go pull that out and look at it again. That's your very first work. Interesting.
As an inker, yeah.
So, where did this go? How did this get you more stuff?
Well, the next thing that I was offered
this would have been roughly what, 87, 88?
Yeah, 88 by this time, because it came out in print in 89. So I was working in 88 because you work several months ahead of. And the next thing I was offered, believe it or not, after those 2 horrible books, was Planet of the Apes for Adventure Comics.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I worked 11 issues over Kent Burrell's Planet of the Apes. And
Charles Marshall was the writer for those.
Charles Marshall.
Yeah.
And that was a real learning experience because, I consistently had to do pages every day. And there was like 28 pages in those issues. They were more than 24. Wow. And I got my first paycheck for an entire issue, inked 28 pages, was $400.
I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And after I finished that, I thought I was on top of the world. I thought I was all that and a bag of chips. So I packed everything up and I went out to New York.
Okay, wow.
Yep, I was going to make the tour of the DC and Marvel offices because I I'd arrived. You know,
Wow.
I was a little precocious there.
Now, did you go to New York then?
I did. I went out there for 10 days.
Really?
I did. I stayed with Barry Blair.
Sure.
He had an
Super
apartment.
nice guy.
He had an apartment on Broadway and 42nd Street. A tiny little closet-like apartment that his rent cost more than my entire house payment.
Oh,
it was terrible. Yeah. So I made the tour of the offices. I don't remember the one at Marble that much, but I remember the one at DC very much because this is kind of a famous story at this point. But I took my samples in there, and the editor looked them over. I won't reveal his name.
Yep. Some of them don't need to be mentioned.
Yeah. And he was flipping through my samples for Planet of the Apes, and he says, "This is really, really good. You're a really good inker. You ink like a man."
Oh, oh no! Of course, the first thing that comes to my mind, he'll look like a man. The Saturday Night Live skit, right? Oh my goodness! And so, I mean, how did you react to that?
Well, I was kind of flabbergasted, and he says, "You know, we don't do monkeys very often here at DC,
Yeah.
But if we ever do, I'll think of you." And I thought, okay, I'm the monkey woman now. So, and then like a few months later, Gorilla Joe came out from DC and going, "Well, he didn't think about me, did he?"
No way. Oh, that's funny.
But that was okay because Malibu hired me then to do to work on the Ultraverse Ultraverse books.
Yeah. No one there ever said you ink like a man, did they?
No, I was treated with absolute respect from the guys at Malibu. They were so great to work for.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. Cassisi says, as a writer, I know visual writing is important. Could you describe the best writing style that you were able to really bring to life with that art, and then describe the mistake made in the worst experience that you inked? So let me that's a two-parter here. Can you describe the best writing style that you were able to really bring to life with the art?
Well, since the pages already arrived to me, already penciled, so that vision had already been realized by the penciler, and it was up to me to interpret. I usually didn't have the script. Yeah. Sometimes I did, but most of the time, I never saw a script.
Right. Yeah, and that's not unusual for an inker. But I recall that from Cat and Mouse, you asked me for the script. You said, "Hey, can I have the script for this?" And of course, I'm like, "Yeah, sure, you can have it." But it wasn't my natural thought to send you the script because, as you mentioned, the penciler is the one who pencils from the script.
Right, and I will ask for a script if I am unsure what the penciler is telling me or what time of day it's supposed to be. That's a huge one. Is like the pencils won't tell me where the lights, what time of day is it, night? Right. Is it because they are counting on the colorist to do the work for them.
Yeah.
So I will ask for the script in those cases where I'm unsure what's going on in the scene. But most of the time I don't need it.
Yeah, so then the second part of the question, no apologies, because you see, it's why we ask the questions, and it's all about learning, right? Because you see, I gotta confess to you, man, I've been very good, but I still want to show them the pages you sent me. I haven't done it because I gave you my word, they're just for me, but I wanted to show my team, like, look, this is one of my students. So the second part of his question is, describe the mistake made in the worst experience that you've inked. So,
my worst mistake.
Yes.
I honestly can't think of. I mean, I can look back on stuff now and going, "Ooh, that wasn't so good," but probably there is one issue that I mistook the guy's edge of his leg was actually the cape And so when I looked at it later, I was just inking along, you know, and after it was already sent off and published and everything, I'm like, what is up with that guy's leg? Holy cow, it looks wrong. And then I realized, oh my God, it was supposed to be a cape there, not his leg. So yeah.
Well, okay. See, he actually says maybe a strong learning point. Is there some point where, like the cape thing, is there some point where you did something, and then later on you look back and it was a fantastic learning experience for you? Maybe not positive, maybe not, or maybe positive, maybe negative, but it was a learning experience for you.
I can't think of it. I don't. You don't see hardly any mistakes on my pages. I've been using the same piece of bottle of whiteout for 30 years.
Whiteout, yeah. And of course, if I know you've shifted to doing some things digitally now, and if you do digitally, it's just like undo, right?
Yeah. That's a nice. I don't have to think about it. I have a tendency to overthink my pages. I will sit there and study them for quite a while before I tackle them.
Yeah.
I will ponder the pages and look at them, and I'll turn them this way and I'll turn them that way. And it used to be, back when I was working on the original pages, the pencils, I would start in the the lower right-hand corner and work my way diagonally across the page up to the far upper left-hand corner, which is exactly opposite of what.
Yeah, because you're right-handed, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah. So you're going over all of your inks as you ink.
Yes, but I'm not smudging the pencils.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, okay.
So I always had 2 or 3 pages going at once. So I'd ink a little bit on this page, I'd set it aside, and I'd bring the other page, and I would work on 3 pages, usually 3 pages at once.
Wow.
And I worked from the far corner down in the bottom to the top because I didn't want to lay my hand over the penciled pages because I didn't want to lose anything. I was afraid I was going to smudge them.
Huh, interesting. Cece said, thanks for that, Barb. He appreciates it. So I want to ask you now, before we kind of move a little, because I do kind of want to talk about your tools and moving into digital. Who were some of your early inspirations? Like who did you look at? And as you were, you said you spent that year training and learning. Who were you looking at? Who did you say, that's who I want to get a line like that, or this inker or that inker and that? Who were some of your inspirations?
Wally Wood, for one.
Oh, wow. That's a great one. Yeah.
Yeah. Mark Farmer is another one. Oh gosh, now you're going to make me think and I can't think. A lot of the old classics. I had a Bernie Wrightson's Frankenstein book that
that's a great one.
Yeah, I would study that one a lot. Joe Sinnott.
Sure. Yeah.
Just
lost.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. Mostly the classics that everybody always looks at. I studied Wendy's work because she was huge in brush, and that was my medium with brushes. Yeah. I really never got into pens much. I did some pens, especially if an editor said, can you give it the image look? I'd break out the quill. The pro quill, but mostly I stuck with the screechy, scratchy stuff. Yeah,
screechy, scratchy. Yeah, I'm sure if Tommy wasn't muted, he would be echoing that sentiment as well. Now, okay, since we're mentioning Tommy real quick, so as we watch Tommy kind of ink, do you ever see an inker do something you're like, well, why did he do that, or why did she do that, or why is he making this circle there? What? Do you ever see them doing things and question, well, that's an interesting way to do it, I may have to try that, or why is that inker doing things that way?
Yeah, there's been several instances where I will look at an inker, I'm like, how the hell did he get that effect?
Okay.
And I've never actually questioned, well, there haven't been many instances where I've looked at somebody and said, why did he do that? Unless it's like a multitude of lines that make no sense at all, where Yeah.
Yeah. What the heck do those lines mean?
Yeah, you're just throwing lines in there.
Now.
You're just throwing lines in there just to throw lines in there. And especially, I really, really dislike seeing a bunch of scritchy lines on women's faces because they look like old hags.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's
a real popular, but well, not the scritchy scratchy on the women's, but the scritchy scratchy and lines for no apparent reason was real popular in the early '90s, particularly with the Image stuff.
It drove me crazy. I like a cleaner look.
Yeah.
But there's been many times when I've looked at somebody's pages and wondered how they got that effect. So then I'll have to like print it out or something like that and stare at it and try to figure out, well, how did they do that? And then I'll try various methods to see if I could reproduce those looks. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm successful, sometimes I'm not. You know, there's a lot of inkers that have such a definite specific style that they've developed that you can't imitate it. Yeah.
Yeah. And some of course comes, from trial and error, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So that was a question about a big blob there. A question about inspiration. What about today? Do you have favorite inkers that are working today? Are there any that you're like, okay, if this inker is on this book, I'm going to buy the book, kind of regardless of whatever else it is?
I've been kind of out of touch with comics in the last few years, and after I got back in, I've been so focused on
making them.
Yeah, making them that I haven't really had a chance to see the new inkers out there. There's books that I collect. I've always been a fan of Terry Moore.
Oh yeah, Strangers in Paradise.
Yeah, I think he's got a beautiful style, and the way he does hair is awesome. I love it. And I've been collecting anything Avengers or Iron Man related, and some of the But I've kind of
why?
I know. But I've kind of fallen out with learning the new crop of artists. I knew everybody in the '90s. I knew everybody, and I've just kind of fallen out of the loop as to who's coming in. I'm starting to learn the names again, but I'm a little slow. And another thing is I have a horrible memory. So I don't know if it's age or what, but I'll look at somebody and then 5 minutes later I'll forget their name. So you'll have to forgive me for that.
Yeah,
I can think of I can think of people. I can see the artwork in my head, but I'm like, oh, who is that again? I can't remember.
You can remember the page, but not the name.
Oh yeah, I can remember the artwork like you wouldn't believe. I can't remember who did it.
I think Tommy said he has that same problem as well. There you go. Hyper Potato BOF says, been a fan of Barb for years, maybe since Adventures with Kent Burrows, trying to remember. I would think he means Adventure Comics, the Planet of the Apes stuff. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, Hyper Potato, you've probably been following Barb since almost the very beginning. Yeah, which is a very, very cool style. Barb, we were talking just before we started. You had worked, I think you said, I forget what year you said it was, but you'd worked with like 7 different publishers that year.
1993, I was working for 7 companies at the same time, which is insane. I mean, I'm a very, very regimented worker when I want to be, when my paycheck depends on it. Not so much these days when I'm retired and I can make my own hours, but when I was putting a roof over my kid's head and our livelihood depended on my inking, I would get up early in the morning and do the kid thing, and then I would ink for 12 to 16 hours every day. I did that 7 days a week for 12 years, and I never missed a single deadline. So I was churning out books right and left, and because I was such a workhorse and I was so dependable, I got a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I was working in 1993, I was working for DC, Marvel, Warp Graphics, Palyard Press, Now Comics, Innovation Comics, and Malibu Comics at the same time.
Now I don't know. I knew all but the one, Palyard. I don't know who that is.
That they I'm going to make me think.
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
Buckado, Space, Zap Gum for Hire, Phil Folio.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay, wow.
Phil Folio, yeah. I did a lot of those. He did the work slow enough so that it only came in, once or twice a year, and I had quoted him a page rate when I first started doing those in 92 or 93. And we didn't end the project until in the late 90s. And by that time, my page rate was like 4 times the rate I had quoted him. But I quoted him a price, and I stuck to it, even though DC and Marvel were paying me really good money.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, I mean, I can confirm that certainly your name around the offices was always, gold. Barb's doing this, Barb's doing that, and it probably doesn't surprise you that editors get kind of territorial. No, this is my inker. You can't have her. I've got these projects, and if she gets on your projects, then she won't be doing my projects. And I think that's part of the reason that the companies came up with rate sheets because they didn't want their editors bidding against each other for
really.
Yeah. We had a rate sheet. In fact, when Marvel bought us, we got access to the Marvel rate sheets because they didn't want us doing the same thing with Marvel talent. They're like, yeah, we don't want you calling them and saying, what's Marvel paying you? We'll pay you $10 more, $20 more, something like that a page.
Interesting.
Yep. So it was, hey, we'll offer you your Marvel rate or whatever, so that they have to make the choice.
Well, I knew that editors had their own stables of talent that they like to hold on to, and that's one of the reasons that when everything imploded at the end of the century, I kind of lost my jobs because my editors went away and the new editors brought in their own stables, and I was kind of burnt.
It's a frustrating thing, but when you take that step back and remove the emotions involved with it, which is hard to do, right? You understand, okay, these editors are bringing in people that they know and have worked with and trust and can rely on. And it's just easier to do that than to say, I don't know you, even though I know you worked on this project before. I don't know you, so see you later.
Yeah. And like I said, I got a really good reputation in the industry during the 90s. I was turning out 2 pages a day, and I was doing that 7 days a week. Plus, I was doing covers and trading cards, and I love doing trading cards.
Yeah.
Because those were insanely priced. They paid so even better than my page rate.
That's what I've heard.
And for one little 5x7 piece, it was like, yes, I'll do the whole stack. I don't care.
Yeah, I've heard that from just about any artist that I've ever talked to about trading cards, and I'm like, really? Wow. But apparently that there's quite the budget for those.
Yes. Nice.
Yeah. So seven different publishers in 93, which is certainly a very big year for Malibu, because that's the year Malibu launched the Ultraverse. Yep. So there were a whole lot of titles. What are some of the, and I'm asking this just because I was at the Ultraverse. So what Ultraverse titles can you remember working on?
Strangers, Mantra, of course, Solitaire. I did every issue of Solitaire.
And that was over Jeff Johnson.
Jeff Johnson, right? Yeah, that was. And I'm looking here and trying to see the solution. There he goes. There's another one.
Yep.
And that's Solitaire. I can't remember all of the ones that I did. I think that was. Oh, and I did one crossover with when Malibu and Marvel had their.
Oh, yeah.
I did the Avengers with George Perez.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Sweet. Yeah, that was a good
my only Avengers book. Oh.
Yeah, the whole long story about the characters and what should have come to Malibu that didn't, but still it was fun for the things that we got to do, what with Loki and the Black Knight being part of Ultra Force. So after that, you did eventually end up at DC and Marvel doing some stuff.
Mm-hmm. Now, Marvel was a little disappointing. I mean, I love Marvel. I'm a Marvel gal, even though I love DC too. But I had a very hard time getting anything out of Marvel that wasn't female related.
Do you think if your name had been Bob Kaalberg, it might have been?
Could be very much. DC gave me all superheroes. Malibu gave me superheroes. It didn't matter. But Marvel, I got a lot of Barbie, and I actually inked Amanda Connor on Barbie because that's what she could get at the beginning.
Yeah, who's a big name today?
I know. And I did a lot of Barbie. I did some Disney. I did an issue of Captain Marvel, a little She-Hulk. But you see, you get a theme here going.
Yeah, I do. I absolutely do. And you know, you and I've talked about this probably a little bit on stream, but a lot off stream. I don't get that. That's not something that I understand because it's just not really part of my lexicon, you know. What I understand is styles, and if someone says, "Oh, I like your style," and we have this style on Barbie, but I also have that style on Quasar, you know. And so I added both books. Which one do you want to do? You know, yeah.
And there was a long time, many years, I was kind of bitter about just being stuck with Barbie, and I did a lot of Barbie, and I was kind of bitter about that until a few years ago. I started doing conventions again, and I had a lot of free copies of Barbie.
Yeah,
and there were guys bringing their little girls to these conventions, and they went crazy for these Barbie books. And I got to thinking, you know, in a lot of cases, those Barbie books were the first introduction that these little girls had to comics.
Comics, yeah.
Yeah, so that kind of made it all better.
Yeah,
you know?
Good. Well, yeah, and you know, my daughter, when she was young, was a huge Barbie nut. Wasn't something that we pushed as her parents. She just gravitated towards it, and she loved everything Barbie. You know, which, you know, includes the comic books. So I would have to go back and look because, in all honesty, I didn't pay that much attention to them. But you know, it's quite possible she had some of the ones that you inked.
Probably.
She was born in '95, so that would have put her maybe a little bit young for comic reading at the time. But you know, anyone who's watched me any number of times know that I love shopping in the quarter boxes. So no telling what I picked up from there.
Now DC was a whole different story. I believe the first thing I did for DC was Hawkman. I'm not sure if that came first or if Primal Force came first. Primal Force was really interesting. I spent 17 issues on that. Every issue that they had before it was canceled, I was on every single one. It was a brand new,
Wow.
It was.
Yeah. I think I had a bunch of the issues.
It was a brand new book. I actually was flown out to New York for that. So was Ken Hooper, the penciler, and Steve Siegel, the writer. And we had this creative meeting on that. And they brought some obscure characters. There was Red Tornado, Golem, Claw, Jack-o'-lantern, and a new character that had never been seen before, and that was Meridian. That was the girl. And so they were doing character sketches, and Ken Hooper just used me as the model for Meridian. So
oh, cool.
Yeah, so I was actually Meridian.
Wow.
In Primal Force.
I have to go back and look and see if I still have those.
And so we did that, and I did all 17 issues. Eventually, Ken was too far behind, and so they brought some guest pencilers on to finish off the series. Jim Hall was one.
Oh, sure, Jim.
Yeah, I loved working on him.
Yeah.
He's very good.
Yeah. You know, I've tried to talk him into doing some Silverline stuff with us.
Oh, I would love to work with him again.
Yeah, maybe I'll tell him that and see if that helps at all. I did a show with him a few years back, and I asked him what else, you know, if I approached him at the time. This probably goes back to around the time of Cat and Mouse 1. And he just said, yeah, I'm just playing golf these days. Okay, I guess so.
I'm sitting on my patio half the morning, so you know.
Yeah. Yep.
I do this for fun. I was also working for, you know, I wasn't exclusive to DC, even though later on I had a contract with them. I wasn't exclusive. They never made me stick to just them. So I was also working for Now Comics at the time and Innovation.
So what are some of the titles you did for those?
I did Green Hornet for Now Comics.
Ron Fortier, who was penciler? Do you remember? Was that?
No, I don't.
That wasn't
Pelletier, I think. Yeah.
Paul Pelletier?
I think he did one of those. Tuma, Paul Tuma did some of those too.
Sure, okay.
I also did Married with Children.
Sure, I remember that book. Wow.
Speed Racer.
Go Speed Racer.
Yeah. Now, don't forget, I've done over 200 titles, so I'm not going to remember everything at this late date.
I just asked you to remember the highlights.
Yeah. And for innovation, I did a lot of the movie adaptations. I did Freddy's Dead and Child's Play, Lost in Space, and I actually worked with Bill Mumy and Miguel Ferrer on that.
Nice.
Yeah, and what most people don't realize is that Innovation got the rights to do the Stephen King movie adaptation of Lawnmower Man. And they had Stewart and Monin pencil that. It was a 60-page graphic novel. Stewart and Monin pencils, which were beautiful. Oh my God, they were so gorgeous. I inked it. It was fully colored, ready to go to press, and Stephen King killed it. Brought his lawyers on board, and they killed it before it went to press. We still all got paid for it, so I mean, props to Innovation for that. But somewhere or other, David Campetti has got these beautiful pages stuffed away.
Oh man,
that are never going to see the light of day. Stewart Amonin's beautiful work.
Isn't it depressing that and we could probably go out tick off a little list of things of projects that were finished but will never see the light of day for various reasons. Most of them stupid. That's unfortunate. Wubba says, I'm with you on the quarter bins, Roland. You find some good stuff in those. I absolutely 100% agree. Lots of gems in those. Hyper Potato said, Jim who? I didn't understand the last name. Jim Hall, Hall. Jim also did, for me, he did some protectors at the very end of the run. So, super talented guy who I really wish would draw some more comics. So the Marvel and DC stuff, was that mostly happening about the same time, or were you
That's pretty much, those were my two mainstays for a long time. DC actually threw me more work than Marvel, because I ended up working on long period projects for them. I spent 2.5 years on Impulse for them. I spent 2 years on Craig Rousseau, and Bill Messner-Loebs was the writer.
Wow. Okay.
I was actually under contract to DC at the time, but it wasn't exclusive. I was allowed to work for other companies.
Well, so let's talk, because I know there are a lot of people who if they don't watch live, they'll watch the replays. When you say under contract, and I'm not asking for the specifics, but when you're under contract at DC, what does that mean? What does that entail?
Well, for one thing, it gave me health insurance.
Okay, so health insurance,
which is great. It means I contracted to do a specific number of issues for a specific book.
Okay.
And I had to honor those. You know, I couldn't back out and say, oh, I got another offer from so-and-so. I'm going to back off the book.
Right.
You know, I couldn't leave the book. So that's basically what it meant. It meant I wasn't under exclusive, so I could work for other people, but I had to finish this book, which I had no problem with. I loved working on that book. Impulse was a great gig.
Yeah.
And after I left it, after the 2 years was up, they brought on Ethan Van Sciver to be the new penciler and a new team. And his inker got behind, so I ended up doing another 6 months or another 6 issues of Impulse over Ethan. So I ended up actually doing 2.5 years of Impulse. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to I forget the title you said it was Ken Hooper was doing.
Primal Force.
Primal Force. So so you said they brought in fill-in artists because Ken wasn't able to keep the pace. Did they ask you to do the fill-in pencilers as well, or did they just not ask you to work on those?
Oh no, I did every issue.
Oh, okay.
Over all the pencilers.
Okay, so they didn't skip you.
Nope.
While skipping Ken. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I know that this is going to be a difficult question to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. When you look at your body of work, and what I will do is I will say, except for the newest stuff, Cat and Mouse and Divinity. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at your body of work, what would you say has been? What would you say was your favorite book, and maybe what do you look at with the most pride and say, I'm so glad that I was able to do that?
Oh, yeah, that is a difficult question, because I could probably give you 2 or 3 answers
okay, that's
for each
fine.
one of those. Jeff Johnson and I made an absolutely kick-ass team on Solitaire. I was proud to do every issue of that.
Yeah.
I was proud to do every single issue of Primal Force, especially since I was one of the characters. Or the model for one of the characters.
Yeah.
And so I did the entire run of that, and I was really glad that I did. I was proud to be on Impulse for that. I mean, a lot of artists don't get the chance to spend 2+ years on a book.
Especially today.
Yeah, that's a real notch in my belt for that. But mostly I was just proud that I had a good reputation.
Yeah.
I really worked hard to maintain that reputation as a good workhorse. I wouldn't say that I'm the best inker in the world by far. There's a lot of other inkers out there that I look at and I'm like, oh my God, I don't even know why I bother trying.
Why did I get up this morning, right?
But I had a good reputation. I had a great reputation as a professional. I met my deadlines. I was consistently professional in my dealings, and that's a matter of pride.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so because you said this, so I'm going to ask you maybe to confirm or deny it. One of the things that I tell my students, of course, now keep in mind I do teach writing students and not art students. But one of the things that I tell my students is, it's not always how good you are at the writing itself. It's can you meet the deadlines? You have to be able to meet the deadlines. And if you're okay, a lot of times you're going to get hired as the okay guy rather than the person who's like, wow, this is a great person. Well, they're great, but they can never meet a deadline. So,
and I've had lots of pencilers like that.
Yeah, but what happens?
Your professional reputation is everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
Would you say that? Would you say it's fair to say that you have gotten jobs simply because the editors know you can meet the deadlines?
Oh, absolutely. I was filling inkers on so many projects because the project got behind, or the other inker, the usual inker, wasn't available or doing something else, or had a family emergency. Give Barb a call.
Yeah,
because she'll make the deadline. She'll get the job done. I got a lot of work that way.
Yeah,
it's not a bad way to get it.
No, not at all. I think that's important for young artists to keep in mind, is that I hear so, and Barb, you probably heard it too. I hear so much. Well, I'm working on these pages, but I've been working on this page for a week now. And my thought is like, well, what the heck are you going to do with that one page that you've been working on for a week? In a week's time, you should have done, in my thinking, minimum three pages, right? What the heck? I'm glad to hear you confirm that. And I don't know how many of my current students are listening. Probably not any, but it's something I definitely talk about and it makes some students mad because I am such a stickler for the deadlines.
Yes, I think it's huge. I had one penciler that I was working with, and I won't name names. Not like that. I don't like to throw anybody under the bus.
No, I'm going to ask you favorite ones here in a minute.
And he was penciling a series that I was working on, and the issue just got later and later and later, and finally I called him up and I said, "Where's my pages?" And he's like, I just haven't been able to feel the art.
Oh no!
This is a business. I mean, yes, we're all artists, but it's also our reputation is also our business.
Yep.
It's also our livelihood. So, just get to the drawing board and do your job.
Oh, that's nuts. Oven, I see your question. I'm going to hang on to your question for just a little bit. But Barb, while we're talking about pencilers, who have been some of your so I'm not going to ask you the ones that you didn't want to work on, okay, or don't want to work on. Let's talk about the ones that you absolutely enjoyed. Who have been some of your favorite pencilers to work? You've already mentioned Jeff Johnson. Yep. So who have been some of your favorite pencilers to work on?
Howard Porter.
Okay, cool.
Ivan Reese, Dean Zachary, Ken Hooper, Jim Hall.
Okay, wow.
Amanda Connor, Craig Rousseau.
Wow.
I could go on and make a huge long list, but I can't. I'm blanking.
Bunch of cool pencilers there.
Yeah, like I said, I've done like 200 books, so I kind of forget everybody at some point. I'm blanking. Sorry. Oh, John Stadema.
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is kind of interesting because he does have a bit of a different kind of style than the real smooth.
Yeah, very tight,
yeah.
Very detailed. So yeah, I actually like tight and detailed. People will say, "Well, isn't it just tracing?" I'm like, no, not really. No. But I'm a very anal kind of person. I suppose you could correlate that because in my other real life job, I'm an accountant, which is a very anal type of work.
Yeah.
And I like tight pencils, so that's very anal as well. And if you would have seen some of the pages that I worked on Ethan Van Sciver before he started inking his own stuff, they were insane. And so is John Stadema.
Yeah. Now I don't think I've seen Van Sciver's pencils, but I've seen Stadema's obviously because he did some stuff for Malibu.
Rags Morales is another one.
Cool.
Yeah, I think
those are some good pencils, pencilers. So Oven, I'm going to ask this question. I'm not sure that we're going to give you the answer you want because that's a really loaded question. I'm going to ask it, Barb, but it is kind of a loaded question, and we love you, Oven, but you're setting us up here almost. So Oven says the question is for both of you. He says, which Silverline book has your favorite style of art?
Anything I'm working on.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Anything that you're working on. I think for me, Oven, I think that I love comics. Okay, and so I like all different styles of art. I like. I'm not a big manga fan, so I don't like the manga. For me, and I know people always say, "Yeah, but what about this artist?" And so I know there are exceptions out there. Manga tends to be a little too simplistic, not cartoony. I don't mind cartoony. I like cartoony, but it's simplistic. There doesn't seem to be a lot there. And I know it is what it is for what it is. But I like all kinds of styles. So my concern for the Silverline books, obviously, is do we get the right style of art on the right project? And I obviously I would be lying if I didn't say I think we've been able to pull that off for the Silverline titles. So I just think that story helps determine the kind of style of art.
I have a tendency to lean towards more realistic type penciling. I don't particularly, and I've done it because you're a freelancer, you get hired to do stuff, you do it. I did The Mask for Now Comics, which was very highly caricaturized,
right?
Very exaggerated, expressions and very, very cartoony and over exaggerated caricatures. I don't tend to like that type of style. I'll do it. It's easy.
Yeah.
But if I can pick, I prefer a more realistic looking style.
Yeah. I think my first the first time I really kind of liked something that wasn't sort of the realistic thing, like a Perez or something like that, who's one of my favorites. I can't remember the name of the book, but do you remember an artist by the name of Trent Canuga or something like this?
No.
Shoot, Tommy probably remembers. What was his name? Trent Canuga. He did an independent book in the 90s. Canuga, maybe. Says he's worked. Where's the comics? Says he's worked on a bunch of games, but that's not what I'm looking for. I don't want to stick on him. It's not about him. I'm trying to remember the name of the book that he did. Oh, it's called Creed. And he's got a very sort of manga influenced, a little bit along the lines of a Ringo style, something like that. Kind of a car. Really, it's kind of, the way I look at it, it's kind of it's American art influenced by manga. Hyper Potato, you got it right. Yeah, Trent Canuga of Creed. That was really the first one I saw that I went, wow, I really like the look of this. But for me, I do think it has to be, it has to kind of fit the project. I don't think that I would like that style on say a project like, Cat and Mouse, which is
more gritty.
Yeah, more of a gritty thing. Yeah. Wubba's got a question for you. Okay. He says, do you prefer a heavy-handed penciler laying dark lines or a soft-touch penciler?
I've worked with both. When I was, all right, let's break this down into two parts. When I was working on original pages, I did not like the heavy hand. Did not like it at all because my ink wouldn't stick to the graphite. So the soft touch worked better in that respect because if you laid the ink on especially in the large dark area, black areas, and then you went and erased it later, the ink would slide right off the graphite.
Yeah.
It sucked big time. But
would you have to kind of come back and touch that up with ink?
Yeah, and then I erase it, and then my husband was my blacker. He would come in and touch them back up. But now it's flipped because now I get all of my pages electronically, and I print them out on blue lines. And if you use a really soft touch now, those blue lines fade right out. I prefer a heavy-handed approach now because the blue lines will show up much, much clearer and crisper than the soft, feathery, gentle touch, which I'll lose a lot of lines that way. When you turn it into blue lines and then print it out with a printer. Some of them don't print.
Yeah. So that's a good question. And now I'm not asking for penciler names here, but can you think of any times that you've worked on a project that the penciler has been unhappy with your work or reached out and said, you're doing this wrong, or I want you to do this, or again, no names, not asking, we're not trying to point negative names at, but what I'm looking for is how did you react to those kind of instances? What did you do in your own work? Because as you've mentioned multiple times, and I 100% agree with you, you're a professional and you have to take these things in stride. But how do you react to those, and how do you handle those, and then how does that affect your work?
I try to be very objective and see where the penciler is coming from. It hasn't really happened very often. Maybe
that's good.
Maybe only 3 or 4 times in my entire career has a penciler wanted me to adjust something I was doing.
Wow.
I had one penciler that didn't like the way I did faces.
Mm-hmm.
So and it was a consistent complaint. So I finally just said, why don't you ink the faces yourself, and then I'll take it from there. And that worked.
So would it have been fair, do you think, in a situation like this? Is it fair for the inker to say, hey, why don't you pencil this a little tighter so I have a better idea of what you want?
Yeah, it's absolutely that is absolutely reasonable, because if you can't tell what they're trying to do in a like, what the hell is this? Is this what is this glob here?
Right.
Is this supposed to be somebody's hand? Is it supposed to be their pouch on their leg? I'm not quite picking up what they're putting down. So yeah, it's absolutely within your right to ask them to either tighten up their pencils or ask them, what are you getting at here on this page?
Yeah.
On panel number 3, what is that blob?
Right.
And I've done that plenty of times. I've done that lots of times, actually. I will contact a penciler and say, what is this thing here in the corner?
Yeah.
And, I'll be happy to ink it. You just got to let me know what it is.
Yeah. Tommy says, yup. Now, so that's kind of, that's an interesting question, because, you got your start in the late 80s when we didn't have email. Now, I first got my first email address. I got it in 1990, so I've had it for a long, long time. But a lot of people really didn't get email until middle 90s ish, maybe even to the late 90s. How has your communication with pencilers changed from the days of mail and FedEx and fax to emails?
That's FedEx, fax, and phone. That was our lives back then. Yeah. Phone, fax, and FedEx.
You still have a fax machine?
No, I don't, but I did. I used to have a Rolodex too.
Oh yeah.
I know you're big on those.
Yeah. Actually, I found, I held my cards, my old Rolodex cards up. Mm-hmm. I found a picture that Kurtis Fujita sent me sitting at my desk that has the you can see my Rolodex in the picture.
Well, if I didn't have the penciler's actual telephone number, mm-hmm. then I would contact my editor and say, okay, I'm having trouble interpreting what this is on panel number 3. Could you contact the penciler and ask? And they were really good about getting back to me. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I can't think of any specifics off the top of my head, but I do recall having an occasional conversation with an inker like that. It's like, I can't tell what this is. You need to tell me what it is, or let me talk to the penciler somehow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about, since we're talking about this, let's go ahead and talk about how your work has changed. And I don't mean the quality of your work, but I mean how your work has changed with the advent of technology. Because everything you used to do was with literally wet ink on a piece of paper, and now you do a lot of your work digitally.
I do I've learned to color. That's a whole different subject. But I do one book digitally, and that's Cat and Mouse.
Okay.
Just because the penciler, I think his style lends itself really well to digital. But I'm still doing the other books that I'm working on. I'm still doing them old style. Yeah.
So like all of Divinity was inked old school. You can't hear me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realized you couldn't hear me. So all of Divinity then was inked old style, old school.
It was. Yeah. I'm still inking old school. I mean, the only thing that has really changed in that regard is that I no longer get the originals. I get them sent electronically, and then I print them out. And when I first started doing that, I mean, I took a hiatus for about a decade.
Okay.
Even though I had a few pieces here and there that were coming out, pretty much I was stagnant for a decade. And when I came back, everything was done electronically, and I was horrified. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to get my pages blue lined. I didn't like the look of them because I thought you couldn't see them as well as original pencils. And so at first I had to have a friend blue line the pages for me, send me the files, and then I would print them out.
Wow.
But I finally have GIMP, which is a free Photoshop program type thing. And I finally figured it out how to do it myself. So I can do all of that myself. Now I've come a long ways. And I also clean up the pages on GIMP. I threshold the blue out once I've done it. And see, that's a whole nother thing is learning the new way to do it. Yeah. After you've printed out the pages on a blue line, and I use a Brother Pro, because there aren't a lot of printers out there that can handle this weight, this weight of paper without clogging. But the Brother Pro does a really good job of that. So once I've printed it out and I ink it and I'll scan it back in, I'll pull it up in GIMP, and then I have to do a threshold to drop all the blue out, because and just leave the black behind. And then my husband will go in afterwards and he'll find any little dirt, I call it dirt.
Right, yeah.
Little bits and pieces that are left behind on the darker blues that didn't completely drop out, and he'll erase those. And then once everything's cleaned up, I'll send it off to the editor. And then that's a far cry from when I first broke in. And everything was just shoved into a FedEx box and shipped off to the editor. And I mean, I would literally work up to the last second. I knew when my FedEx driver was going to come. It came at the same time every day, so I'd be like rushing. I was like, how much time left? How much time left?
Yeah. Yeah. Our FedEx delivery guy used to literally dolly in all the boxes every day. He would have a dolly, and it was just stacked with FedEx boxes, and he would deliver them. And then one of our guys would come around and deliver the boxes to the individual editors or whoever got it. But yeah, it was pretty incredible to see all those boxes delivered every day.
And you could tell the pencilers that smoked too, because you'd open up the FedEx box and it would just waft out of the FedEx box. The smoke, the nicotine, and the smoke smells like, oh my god. Dan
and David Day, oh my gosh, I worked with them on a project, and wow, the smoke! You could almost see the smoke coming out of their box.
Dennis Jensen was it was terrible about that. His pages just reeked. I loved his pencils. I loved working on his pencils, but his pages reeked.
Wubba says he has the same printer scanner, and it's a great piece of equipment.
Yes, it is.
So let's backtrack just a moment. And you said you took a 10-year hiatus. Can you talk about that? What caused you to take the hiatus, and then what caused you to jump back in?
There was about 3 different factors that caused me to jump out for a while, and one of them was the industry imploded, and my 2 editors that were my consistents, Paul Kaalberg and Kevin Dooley, left DC, and I relied on them a lot, and they gave me anything and everything I wanted. So it was really sad to see them go. But the DC had a huge turnover, and they wanted new blood. They thought that would improve, sales. So it was after a dozen years of being such a consistent and reputable workhorse, I was reduced to knocking on doors again, and it was really disheartening. And I was kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
But even so, I would have stuck to it. But my daughter had some health issues that I needed to attend to, and that cost money. And the work was spotty at that point. So my husband was like, "We need something consistent with healthcare." So I dropped out for family reasons, more or less. And it turned into a decade. Which I wasn't expecting. And then I got a call from IDW. They were working on a book called Womanthology, and that's how I got back. Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm featured in it. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I'm featured in like a big double-page spread, and
wow.
And I did a couple of the stories, inked a couple of the stories, and then I did the how-to for inking.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I got back in, and.
Because that was around 2012, something like that.
Oh, I can tell you exactly. It was like 2011.
2011. Okay, so that's close.
Yeah. And I mean, comics, once you're in it, it's in your blood forever. You constantly yearn for it. There were years when I was out of it that I couldn't watch Entertainment Tonight when they talked about San Diego Comic-Con because it was too painful. I would just yearn to be there so bad because I'd gone for so many years. But needs must, and you do for your family. Your family comes first. And
Absolutely.
when I got back in, I actually had one of my former publishers who says, "Well, you must not have been very serious about it if you got out." And I'm like,
what?
I don't know about you. I don't know how much you love your family.
Wow, really? They said that?
Yeah, it really ticked me off.
Yeah, me too. I mean, it ticks me off for you. What the heck?
Yeah, I mean, you do what you got to do, and sometimes it's painful for you, and sometimes you have to put your own dreams aside for a while.
Yeah.
And the hard part was when I got back in, everybody had forgotten about me. It was like, who are you? Well, I've done like 200 books. Yeah. I've worked consistently throughout the entire 90s. Nope, never heard of you.
Well, and now I have a theory about that, and you can tell me if you agree with the theory. I think a lot of it is because so many of the people who are in charge at the companies today, they number one, weren't working in the industry at that point in time. Number two, don't really know anything about it. I mean, they get in the position that they're in, but they don't really know anything about the industry. I think what I'm trying to say is that not just that they don't know anything about the industry, but they don't really know about what's come before.
Yeah, they don't know their history.
Yes, and I think that's vital. If you're going to edit the Avengers, you doggone well better know Steve Englehart's run and John Buscema when he was on the book, and the classic Perez stuff and Roy Thomas's run. You need to know those things, and I just I don't get it. I
agree. When I came back in, everybody was. It seems like my old crowd. Everybody was off doing other things. And this whole new crop of editors and artists were working. I didn't have a clue who they were.
Yeah.
I've learned. I've met a lot of them now. Once I got back in, I've made a new circle of friends.
Yeah.
That I never had before. A pretty wide circle of friends. But when I first got back in, it was kind of overwhelming. I'm like, who are these people? I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. It changes. It changes pretty quickly. I think. And I think, and I don't know that we want to dwell there that long, because I think this could have a tendency to get too negative. But aside from the fact that you've talked about, an editor telling you, "Oh, you ink like a man," you obviously had to deal with some of the sexist attitudes out there, which, of course, for me looking at, I mean, you've excelled despite that.
Persistence,
yeah. I would say, not in the 1980s or 90s, but today you've also got some of the age things.
Yes,
I think going on, and
I've got a double whammy there.
You do have a double whammy.
I'm a woman, and despite the vast and massive strides that women have made in comics, there is still a gap.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of ageism in comics. If somebody tells you there's no such thing as ageism in comics, unless you are a blazing superstar like George Perez,
right,
or Walt Simonson,
right?
Oh yes, there is.
Yeah.
There's plenty of ageism in comics.
Yeah,
because they always want the hot new young thing that's going to blaze new trails and make them tons of money.
That's right. And it's so funny that you say that, because Wubba just said Marvel and DC seem to be looking for flash in the pan sales over longevity and history. And I think I would have a tendency to agree that. I'm people kind of laugh at me sometimes because I tend to be super indie guy. But I think part of the reason that I'm like that is because I find personally that independent comics have a tendency to be more inclusive. As far as
I agree,
the people who work in them, and I think they've been that way for a long time. and I think that's part of the reason I like them so much. I mean, aside from the corporate blah 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 blah, which we could get into, but I won't.
We're going to save that for one of our future Silverline shows, because that'll be a 2-hour program there.
Oh my goodness, yes, yeah, it would be. So let's talk about what time is it? Let's talk about now. How did you go from getting back into the industry to finding yourself with Silverline? I mean, I know the answer to that.
That's an easy one. Yes, that's an easy one. I was just, kind of putting myself out there. I did some projects with Paul Kaalberg for Charlton Neo, a few things for Empire Lab, and I was just kind of, trying to put my name back out there, saying, "Hi, I'm still alive." And one day, Dean Zachary got a hold of me and said, "Would you be interested in working with me again?" And I had worked with Dean on Nightman. There's another title for Malibu that I forgot. I'd done Nightman with him. Witch Hunter is another one I did for Malibu. I'm remembering these now way later. But anyway, and we worked really well together. Now, Dean has a very specific style.
Yeah.
It's a little bit on the sketchy side, and there aren't many inkers that can interpret his lines the way that he wants them, but I'm one of them.
Yeah.
And he has always really, really loved my inks. So when you guys got together and started talking about doing some projects, he contacted me and said, "Would you like to work with me again?" And then you started talking to me too, and it became us three.
Yep.
And so we were working on Cat and Mouse, and we were kind of throwing around some other projects, possible future projects. And from that experience, Silverline was reborn.
Yep.
And I've never looked back. I haven't worked for anybody else after that.
I know that you were doing, and I'm not going to say it here because I like the people, but I remember there was you had done something else around the same time as Cat and Mouse, and I don't know if Kickstarters were running at the same time or concurrent, or they were pretty close. And I know that when it was all said and done, you're like, I really like this because I made more on this project than I did on the other project. And I think the other project had more backers. I can't remember if it probably had more money, earned more money too. And I always felt good about that because, I work really hard to be a good steward of the money that's there, try to, be conscious of the money that we spend, because I know that in the end run, it's really going for the creators. And that made me incredibly happy to hear you say that. Like I said, even though I have a lot of respect and like the creators that you mentioned. I remember the first thing I told Dean when he mentioned that, and I don't know if Dean ever told you, Hyper Potato said, "Nightman looks so good."
Thank you.
I remember Dean mentioned it to me, and I said, "Well, dude, I don't know." And he said, "Why?" He said, "Don't you like her inks?" And no, I like Barb's inks a lot, but I don't know that she would be willing to do it for the way that Silverline has to function, because I just don't know that's something that she's going to be willing to do." And he says, "Well, I really like her stuff." I said, "Well, here's the deal." I said, "I have never been one that's been shy." And I said, "If you think that Barb is going to be interested in this, then I will absolutely ask her." And he said, "Yeah, I want you to do that." So I said, "Okay." Well, and then that's how I said, "Okay, Barb, here's how it works." And I still remember you're like, "I'm in."
Yeah, and I've had a couple of other offers since I jumped on with Silverline, but truthfully, Silverline is such a great group of people. I mean, we're all having so much fun doing what we're doing. I mean, nobody's in here to make themselves rich, not yet anyway. That's coming down the pike. But it's a group of people who want to be doing this, and we're enjoying each other's company. We like talking. It's more of a family atmosphere.
Very much so.
Than a corporate atmosphere. And I made the decision to throw my hat in for the long term because I believed in it.
Yeah.
I don't need the money. I'm retired. I have a nice retirement. I'm doing this because I genuinely love comic books.
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. I love the people that I'm working for, and I believe in it. So
yeah,
I don't need it to make me rich. Although that would be a nice benefit.
It would be nice. Absolutely, it would be nice. Yeah. And it's funny because I had kind of made the Silverline pitch to somebody, and he said, "You don't want to make money?" I said, "No. You misunderstand me." I said, "That's not why I'm doing this, but yes, I absolutely want to make money. Of course I do."
Oh, absolutely. I'd love to get to the point where several issues down the road, when we've got a few issues of Divinity under my belt, I'd like to shop at the Hollywood. You better believe it.
That's right. Yeah.
I wouldn't say no.
Nope. I would not. So yeah, and hopefully, and of course you and I have talked a lot about this in our board meetings and stuff. Oh man, hold on, Barb, we have a troll on Twitch, and they're posting stuff that I got to delete. I apologize. Let me.
Nope. Go ahead.
Get over there. I can't. I've never had to do this quickly. Let me see how I can do this.
It happens.
It does.
I've had my fair share of trolls on my life.
My view.
Trolls, stalkers. Yeah, I've had them all.
Crap, I'm not really sure how to do this. I know you can do it, but crap. Bans. I need to ban. How do I ban? Where's my son to help me with this? Block. Yes. Block. Yes. I hope. I don't know if that will get rid of the comments. Okay. I'll have to go back in and delete those others, but at least I think they've been blocked. Ban. I'm going to ban them. Okay. So I don't know if that will delete all the comments. For those of you who happen to be watching on Twitch, I am incredibly, I apologize incredibly for all these nasty comments. I will delete them so that they're not on there much longer, but I got to focus on our little time remaining with Barb. And I just closed my window. Barb, are you still there?
Yep, I am.
Okay, good. All right, here we go. Yeah, sorry about that, Barb, but yeah. Yeah, I think that's really the only place that we get any kind of comment trolls, and that's on Twitch. And I think it's just like there's so many people hanging out on Twitch, which would be a nice platform. If I wish they would add the subsection of comics. So let's talk about. We talked about Silverline, which kind of brings us up to date. What would you, if you kind of had your druthers and stuff and wishes and all that kind of stuff, what would you like to see? I mean, assuming that we get out of COVID quarantine here in a reasonable amount of time, what do you kind of foresee as the future for Divinity and Silverline and you inking and that kind of stuff?
What do I see as the future?
Yeah,
I have been really impressed with the steam that Silverline has been building.
Yeah.
It's been reaching more people and getting a good name for itself. I foresee pretty soon, I would like to see conventions actually hosting us.
Yeah.
That would be nice.
Yes, it would be.
Hey, could you bring some Silverline people in?
Yep.
I foresee us being in comic book shops.
Yep.
That would be a huge dream.
Yep. Soon, I think.
Yeah. I just see lots of good things happening. Divinity, I want it to be. I mean, Divinity is the kind of book that's has such a massive cross appeal that I would love for it to become super popular.
Yep.
Trade paperbacks are, graphic novels of it.
Yeah.
I just want it to take off. Even if it just becomes a niche book like Strangers in Paradise, that would be it for me.
Yeah.
I would love it. It wouldn't even have to be, go to Hollywood or anything like that. If it just found a market, that would make my day. That would be everything I could ever have possibly dreamed of.
Sustainability.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. So Cassisi has a question. He says, what advice do you have for up and coming writers and artists, etc.? Comic creators, what advice do you have for the up and coming comic creator?
Persistence.
It's
True. There's plenty of would-be comic book artists that will try for 2, 3, 4 years and just like, it's never going to happen, I just might as well give up. And that's never going to get you anywhere in life. You got to keep practicing your skills, and if it doesn't happen the first time or the 10th time or the 50th time, it could happen the 51st time.
Yeah.
Keep honing your skills. If you go to a convention and you're an artist, have other artists look your work over and tell them to give you a critique and don't hold back.
Yeah.
For one thing, if you can't take a harsh critique, you are in the wrong business. Anything in the entertainment business, whether it be music, books, movies, TV, comic books, are going to have harsh critics. And if you can't take the criticism, if it's too hot in the kitchen, you don't belong in there.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you listen to these critiques, don't take them personally, and listen to what they have to say. Throw out the stuff that you completely don't agree with, but keep those nuggets of information that you never thought to look at.
Yeah.
Look at what they're saying, and then look at the artwork that they're critiquing, and try to see it from their point of view. And a lot of times you'll go, oh, I never noticed that. And take it home, rework it again, and practice more and practice more. If you're a writer, go to workshops. Take online courses if you can't afford to go to writing, to Roland's classes. Keep writing, and I know this probably sounds weird, but there's a lot of fan fiction writers out there that write fan fiction for years and all of a sudden are catapulted into professional writing because they've been writing for years. And the thing is, they post their fan fictions on the internet and they get feedback, and some of it can be pretty harsh. Why are you even bothering? But they finally, by doing it, they learn what works and what doesn't.
Yeah. And I think that's the key. I think the key is, as you mentioned earlier, persistence and doing it. I will tell you this, since you mentioned my students, one of the things that I see most common in the attitude of my students is, for some reason, there is this prevailing attitude of, I just need to get my degree, and as soon as I get my degree, then someone is going to hire me to write their famous thing. Yes. I know, and I tell them, no, you got to make stuff. Because I had a student one time say, I asked him that, he said he was going to do this, and then I was like, well, why are you waiting? He goes, well, I'm waiting until I graduate, and I'm like, but why are you waiting? Why are you? Well, I want to have the degree. No, do it now. There's no reason not to do it now, and for some reason, and writers are particularly bad about this, Barb. Writers are, for some reason, is like, I have written this, therefore here it is. And it
can't be improved upon.
No, yeah, they're not willing to revise and rewrite and listen to other opinions and editors. And they're like, yeah, I've written it there. It must be this. And I'm like, no, you've got to work and work and work and work and work. And then you'll be able to finally figure out, oh, so that's how you do this thing, and then do it some more.
In the old days, it was a red pen.
That's right. That's right. Yep. Royal Airship says, just followed Barb on DeviantArt. Loving your work.
Thank you.
And Cassisi says, thank you for the answer there. And then he laughed at us talking about them. So So, Barb, is there anything that I have not asked that you're like, well, why didn't you ask this, Roland? I really wanted to say this thing. Is there anything
you did a pretty good job. I just wish I could have. My memory would be better. I've forgotten a lot of stuff over the years.
That's okay. We'll forgive you. And the thing about it is, if someone really wants to know, right, they can go look at your bibliography.
That's right.
Right, to find out everything.
On Comic Vine, I think.
Comic Vine, okay. So, yeah, if I can...
Not all of it. I mean, nobody ever gets everything. There used to be a comic book database, and they had about 90% of it, but they still...
Do you have a list of everything?
I do.
Well...
It's pages long. Pages.
No. Here's my offer to you. If you will send that to me, we'll put it on your bio page on the Silverline website.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the thing when I'm telling our creators about the bios, I'm like, I need a short one for the comic book, and I need a really long one, or as long as you possibly want for dadgummit, there's another one there. And any as long as you want. I'm sorry, I got to ban another person here. I don't know how to do this here. Users.
Yeah, I have a shelf here in my studio that just has binders, just a whole line of binders, and it's everything I've ever done. I've kept track of. I put every single book I've ever done. One copy of it goes into the binder, plus special articles or reviews and stuff like that will go into it as well. So yeah, I'm a little anal about it.
That's okay. No, the thing about our bio pages on which is what I was trying to say. I got distracted for this the troll again. The thing about our pages on the Silverline website is it can be as long as you want. We don't have to. It's on the website, so we don't have to worry about space. This is a good question actually. Hyper Potato says, do you still have some of your older art? I'm going to assume Hyper Potato is asking maybe, do you have some of your older art for sale?
Most of it has gone to auction websites.
Okay.
I have very, very few pages left, and those are my personal pieces that I have kept. My favorite pieces.
Yeah. And of course, I will say, Hyper Potato, Barb has been very generous during the Kickstarters that we have run, both for Divinity and for Cat and Mouse, that she has contributed her work for reward tiers. So keep your eyes posted for the next Kickstarter that she's involved with, and you can get some of her work there.
You also have to remember that back in the day, the pencilers would get 2/3 of the pages back from the publisher, and the inker would only get 1/3 of the pages back. So I would only end up with, maybe 6 or 7 pages out of an issue. And most of the ones that were really, really popular, like the Impulse pages, they sold really quick.
Yeah,
I could sell those. Yeah, especially the Ethan Van Sciver pages. Those went to auction at an auction house, and I made some good money off those.
Okay, wow. I was going to ask you, of course, the auction, that's a completely different thing. But, I have seen my friends, Tommy included, I have seen my friends sometimes sell a page. And then I think, like a year later, it's like, wow, you sold that page for $50. You could probably get like $150 for it now, Do you ever regret?
There's pages I wish, really, really wish I had. There's a She-Hulk splash that I sold for back in like 1995 or something like that for $400, and I thought that was a lot of money back then. I could sell it for $1,000 now.
Good grief!
Yeah, I wish I had it back.
Well, okay, so I'll tell you. I'll tell you the story, and this is one of the things, and then I guess we'll bring Tommy on if he wants to rejoin to say anything. At least we'll thank him. I tell my students this story in the class when we're talking about going from traditional to technology, and how I've seen a number of the old guard folks like Walter Simonson and stuff and things like that. Now, I don't know if he's since changed his mind. I've seen him talk about it a little bit, but I had a conversation with Jerry Bingham, and Jerry said this. He talking about digital, because I asked him the question. He said, the problem with going digital, he says, I lose my secondary revenue stream.
Exactly.
And I said, can you explain that to me, Jerry? He said, yes, of course. He says, if I have an original piece of art, he says, I can sell it for $400. He said, if it's from a Batman book, he says, I can sell it for $600. He said, if Batman is on the page, he said, I can sell it for $800 to $1,000 a page. He said, I'm not willing to go digital and give up that revenue stream, that potential revenue stream. And I think
that's why I will never go completely digital. Usually the nice splashes on the books that I work on, I'll do those old school.
Yeah. And I think they sell, and I think that's nice because it also helps maintain a steady influx of original Barb work without flooding it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So let me see if Tommy, you want to rejoin and say anything, say hello or anything. We definitely want to say thank you to Thomas Flormonti, who has been busy this whole time entertaining us with his inking of the project that he and I are working on with a couple of other really talented folks by the name. The project's name is Trumps, and the penciler is Thomas Hedgeland, and it's going to be colored by Sid Van Blue. So Tommy, so I think he's going to probably try to connect here and jump on and say hello. At least he's gone off. Hyper Potato said, I overheard Darwin Cook at a show tell someone he would never go digital because it would be a pay cut. He made good money selling originals.
Yes, absolutely. And another thing, here's another thing that you can do for a pay stream, is that you can turn your originals, even your digital originals, into prints and sell them. So I not only at conventions, I sell my books, I sell my old books, I sell my original pages, and I sell prints that I have made from some of the pinups of my original pages. Yeah.
I've seen my friend Jeff Whiting has done that. I know he had Turtles pages Tick. Thank you, Tommy. Tick pages that were real popular amongst the fans. So he made prints, and he was able to sell those, so he wouldn't completely run out of Tick pages that he had. So Tommy, just wanted to, I don't know if you heard what I said as you were bailing there with the iPad. Just wanted to say thank you for
not a problem.
Last almost 2 hours streaming art for us to visually entertain our eyeballs while we found out everything about Barb.
I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be part of your streaming thing here.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Barb.
Oh, you're welcome. I always enjoy having you on, Tommy. You still owe me a pole dance.
The pole dance?
Yeah.
I'm working on it.
That's a long story.
The deal was if I reach a certain point on my Kickstarter, he would do a pole dance on TikTok. I have yet to see.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, they're installing the pole on Wednesday, I believe, and then I'll start working on it.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Kasisi said, "Amazing art, Tommy. Thank you for streaming as well." So
appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Well, we just want to again say thank you all, and certainly we're happy if you want to leave some questions for Barb after the stream. Leave them in the comments. Be sure to tag her so she can see it. She'll come on and answer anything that I might not have asked tonight. And as we say with everything, make mine Silverline. Good night, everybody. Let me try to end up here with the. Oh, wait a minute. How did I do that? Share my screen.
If you figure out how to shut us off.
Yeah. No. I got to play the little outgoing bumper. Right. Here we go. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.